Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
News. Hello?
Yes, so you see.
Honorable Minister, good evening.
Good evening.
Grateful
good evening,
that
Omar. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Grateful that you joined us. And the reason we want to speak to you after listening to your audio is because of what has been happening the past few days. And with your indulgence, I would want to just read a story on Ghana Web and then ask you how you're juxtaposing your position based on that. Now, a story published on Ghana Web is titled Catholic Bishops Reply President Mahama Kwachi Ofosu over LGBTQI+ comment. They actually issued a statement. The National Catholic Secretariat issued a statement, which is what was used to do this story. And I'm going to read the first few paragraphs. It says, the Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference has issued a public statement on national conversations around the anti-LGBTQI+ bill, responding to recent remarks attributed to President Mahama and the Minister for State in charge of Government Communication, Felix Kwachi Ofosu. The bishops in the statement signed by the Bishop of Sunyani and President of the Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference, Most Reverend Matthew Kwesi Jemfi, and dated Friday, April 10, 2026, said their intervention is guided by their role as spiritual leaders and citizens committed to Ghana's moral and democratic development. They have thus reacted to comments suggesting that LGBTQI+ related issues are not a national priority. And there's a quote. It says, we have taken notice of reports that the president speaking at the World Affairs Council described LGBTQI+ matters as not the most important issue we face as a nation. Unquote. Felix Kwachi Ofosu's remark also said the debate is, quote, a waste of time. The two issues that have been raised, Honorable Minister, are issues that are referring to, one, your boss, the president, and two, Felix Kwachi Ofosu, your colleague. What you have said tonight sounds as though you are taking on the president and his minister for communication, in charge of communication, where communication here means information, not your role. You are suggesting that the people who said priorities or there are priorities are getting the subject wrong, and that could include the president. And that is why we wanted to call you up tonight, to hear why you are saying what you are saying.
Thank you very much, Umar. I have a lot of respect for the Catholic Bishops Conference. They have been one of the strongest support backbones that myself and my colleagues have had since 2021, when I first introduced the Family Values Bill. And they supported us all through the time till we passed the bill in February 2024 and laid it before it was sent from Parliament to President Akufo-Addo. You all remember President Akufo-Addo issued a cease and desist and said he will not sign the bill. The Catholic Bishops Conference at the time was very vocal in calling on President Akufo-Addo to sign on the bill. And so I salute them for staying on the course of protecting family values. If, in their opinion, there is any impression that the issues of Ghanaian family values and the innocence of our children is not a national issue of concern. However, let us put this in context. And I spoke this afternoon because I realized that there is a lot of distortion of facts out there. And I've had cause to speak personally to a number of senior clergymen who have stood as a backbone behind myself and my colleagues, who have started speaking up and questioning if the president has changed his position. I've had the cause to speak to them privately. Today, I've decided to begin to speak publicly. What are the facts on the ground? Many people assume that there is a bill before President Mahama today for his signature, as there was before President Akufo-Addo in February 2024. And just like President Akufo-Addo refused to sign, President Mahama is refusing to sign. That is not factual. In 2024, February, there was a bill passed by Parliament, by a unanimous vote of Parliament, transmitted by the clerk, and the then Secretary to the President, Nana Santi-Bediyo, issued a cease and desist letter. Today that we speak, the bill that I have reintroduced with my brother John Ntim Fojo and a number of other members of Parliament on both sides of the divide is before the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. The bill is not before President Mahama. So when you call on President Mahama to sign a bill, what bill are you talking about? People forget, and it's understandable, that I introduced this bill for the first time in September 2021. It only got passed in February 2024. It takes time to go through Parliament. People say, oh, but you have the majority, just pass it. It is not a government bill. Government bills can go under a certificate of urgency because they are government bills. This is a private member's bill. Because don't forget, even at my vetting, I indicated that I would bring the bill back as a private member's bill. And so I reintroduced it with my colleagues as a private member's bill in August last year. It had to go through the processes of Parliament. People must understand that Parliament is a house of rules, procedure, and record. And because that is the case in Parliament, you cannot just say that, oh, I'm taking this and I want to put it before the House must pass it. It must go through the process. Do not forget, again, for the purposes of our public education, that the same Parliament has suffered an ignoble fate when the bill we passed on marijuana, you remember, medical marijuana, was struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional because Parliament did not go through all the processes they ought to go through to pass that bill. So I hear the proponents and supporters, and I'm excited that even 4 years, 5 years down the line, the support the bill I introduced with my colleague, the Family Values Bill, still has unanimous support of majority of Ghanaians. But we must do this right. Do not forget again, in 2024, there were 3 sponsored court cases against the bill. We won all 3 in the Supreme Court of Ghana simply because we followed the procedure to the letter. We did everything right by the book. If we really are interested in protecting family values, we would go through the process again, do it right, and pass the bill in Parliament, and then hand it to President Mahama and demand that he signs the bill. Not because some judge is saying so, but because President Mahama himself has made a covenant before God and man when he was candidate Mahama that he would sign the bill the day it comes to him. That was his commitment. It is not my demand of him. He, on his own volition, made that as a public pledge to this country. The country had it. The clergy had it. The people had it. But today, is it fair for us to say President Mahama signed the bill? It cannot be a priority because it is not on his desk. The moment it comes on his desk from Parliament, it becomes a priority for him. Today, I know, based on my personal conversations with President Mahama, is that if Parliament completes its work and we lay the bill before him, he has no reservations to sign the bill. But it is only fair that we give the man the opportunity for the bill to get before him. Today, if the Catholic bishops have issued a statement, it is fine for them to issue the statement. But the question I will respectfully ask their eminences, is there a bill before the president that he is refusing to sign? No. So let us, as we did in 2021, 2022, and 2023, put pressure. And Umaru, you would remember, you have interviewed me in 2022 and 2023. When you interviewed me, my anger at the delay was not at President Akufo-Addo. It was at my colleague, Honorable Ayimedu, who at the time was chairman of the committee, who I accused of delaying the process. If you remember, not President Akufo-Addo. I only took President Akufo-Addo on when he issued a cease and desist on the service of the approved bill or passed bill from Parliament. When the case moved to court, I led a demonstration in this country. That demonstration was not against President Akufo-Addo. It was against Chief Justice Tokonu, the first demonstration against the sitting Chief Justice. I led that demonstration. Why? Why didn't I demonstrate against President Akufo-Addo? Because it was no longer before him. It was now a matter for the courts to decide. At every point in time, my advocacy has been targeted at where the bill is. As we speak today, Parliament is on recess. But I have the commitment of the chairman of the committee, the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, and I am thankfully a member of that committee in this parliament. I intentionally wrote to my leadership and said, I want to be a member of that committee. And thankfully, it was acceded. My chairman, Honorable Shaib, has indicated that even though Parliament is on recess, from the 22nd to the 23rd of this month, Parliament will sit, the committee will sit to begin the clause-by-clause consideration. And he's giving me assurances that before the end of this year, the committee will do all it can legally to complete the processes and put it before the House for the House to debate.
Okay.
What more can we ask?
Minister, what more we can ask is whether or not tonight the Minister for Communication is challenging the president who appointed him when the president said we have other priorities. And that's the basis for the Catholic Bishop's statement. And that's the basis for all the reportage. And you are saying that you've heard other people say we have other priorities and that, yes, we have priorities, but this is a priority for the people of Ningo Pram Pram. It sounds as if you are strongly disagreeing with the president and your colleague. That's what I wanted to speak directly to.
Omaro, there is absolutely no conflict in my position and that of the president. The Catholic Bishop Conference makes reference to the comments the president made at the World Council meetings he had in the U.S., right?
Yes.
You need to play the full tape of what President Mahama said, because he spoke within a certain context. If I remember him well, and I did not repeat his words verbatim, but I paraphrase by saying what he said was, look, even in the West, it is not a settled matter, the issue of LGBTQ. In the United States, you have 26 states out of the 50 states that have laws that limit the rights of persons with LGBTQ. And so it is unfortunate for anyone in the West to think that they will determine how a democratically sovereign state should legislate its own affairs. And that as far as he is concerned, they cannot choose to make that a priority of the state. But you see, Umaru, today, you have people who say don't send supporters to the World Cup because we have hospitals that do not have beds. There are people who also say, but why are you building new hospitals when you've not finished finishing the old ones? Is it because of everybody's opinion that we will do nothing? My position is simple. The building of roads is a priority for the state. The building of hospitals is a priority for the state. The building of schools is a priority for the state. The building of whatever infrastructure is a priority. In the same vein, the protection of the family values of the Ghanaian state is a priority for the people. Why? Because don't forget, the state is not just the executive. The state is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The legislature is the representation of the people. Yes, I am Minister for Communication today, serving at the pleasure of His Excellency the President. But I am also the elected member of Parliament for the good people of Ningo and Pram Pram. And the people of Ningo and Pram Pram, my two traditional councils, were the ones who asked me in 2021 to spearhead this agenda. At my vetting, my chiefs were sitting behind me, and I repeated it at my vetting as minister. But as member of Parliament, I will reintroduce the bill because my people voted for me. Well, they increased my vote in 2020. I had 69% of the votes. In 2024, they gave me 74% of the votes, a 5% increase. So one of the critical reasons was because they believed that I had unfinished business in Parliament relative to protecting family values.
However, you see, when you use the word priority in your address, which I've played, it is compared directly to what the president said, and that is
the word priority is used in context.
And what Felix Kwachi has said.
When I said priority, I said it's a priority for the people who sent me to Parliament. The people who sent me to Parliament are the good people of Ningo and Pram Pram.
Do you think it's a priority for this government?
I believe it is a priority when it gets before government. Today there is nothing before government. Umaru, how can you prioritize something that doesn't exist?
Very well. That's understandable.
No, I want us to understand it.
I get you. So right now, it's a legislative issue. It's not an executive issue.
How is it a priority?
Very well. Very well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
When we pass the bill, it will be a priority for the president, and I am convinced that President Mahama will sign. You have my commitment on that.
Great. I was going to let you leave us, but I just thought of something. The president had said in the past that the bill would come through the Attorney General, which then means that the executive has some level of control. The private members' bill in Parliament, executive has no control over. But the one to be introduced by the Attorney General, the executive, which is headed by the president, would then have a control over. So if the government considers this a priority, then the introduction of the bill through the Attorney General could have been expedited and done within what do you call? I think you have a rule in Parliament, a certificate of agency. So why hasn't that happened, to show that the government considers this a priority? Because that would be an indication that no, your government does not consider this a priority, and you, Sam George, would be the one who is breaking ranks on this matter.
Omaru, the president had indicated that he would have loved for the Attorney General to reintroduce the bill. As private members, we also have responsibilities to our constituents. I've told you what my constituents said. I spoke with my colleague sponsors, and they said, without any prejudice to the decision or inclination of the president, let us reintroduce our bill. Because don't forget, under President Akufo-Addo, and you see, that's why I keep saying that this thing, we must do it without partisan coloration. Under President Akufo-Addo, the Attorney General made attempt, Godfrey made attempt for us to let the government take over the bill. I opposed it. I said this will not be handed over to government. If I opposed it under President Akufo-Addo, why should I accept it under President Mahama? That will mean that my opposition to it becoming a government bill under President Akufo-Addo was politically motivated, but that was not my reason.
Okay.
My reason was because I did not want a watering down of the principles of the bill. And so even under my own government, I have reintroduced it as a private member's bill, and the president has acknowledged that. The president acknowledged it in the U.S., acknowledged it in his meeting with the CSO, that a private member's bill is in Parliament. He wants Parliament to complete its work. When it comes to him, he will do what is rightful and what will be done. I can assure you of one thing, Umaru. President Mahama will not issue a cease and desist to Parliament not to serve the bill on the executive. It will go to the executive, he will take the steps per Article 106 of the Constitution, and we will get our approval of the bill. Like I indicated, I will agitate until that bill is signed. Whether it is under an NPP government or an NDC government, the innocence of our children and the protection of Ghana's family values is non-negotiable, is not partisan, and will not be traded for any favors.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. As Honorable Samuel Nate George is Minister for Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation.
PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.